Good evening, everybody. Welcome along. Good to have you here. Replay viewers, thank you for dropping in too. 1994, 33 years in 31 days, day 5. Looking at 1994, no images really tonight to share with you at all, but I have just to hark back to yesterday and also relevant, I suppose, to today. So we're talking about the pandas and getting out and getting that independence of being a panda driver and being able to manage your own workload and go your own way and do your own things, which was great. That independence was brilliant. But we're talking about the emergency equipment that was on the vehicles. I've managed to find a photograph which I shall put up here. In fact, let me see if I can make me a bit smaller. There you go. That's one of the Greater Manchester pandas from about this era, which is quite typical of our pandas in that the wheel trim had fallen off somewhere. But if you look at the roof, you can see it's got this white box with the blue lamp on the top, and that box at the top was that I was talking about, where it had the flashing stop sign, white to the front and red to the rear, and that was all you had: a switch for the blue light and a switch for those stop signs, nothing else. There was no flashing headlights, no two-tone sirens, no nothing. So quite basic. You used to sort of put your blue lights on and flash your headlights manually at people and beep to try and get people out of the way and attract their attention if you were on an emergency run. And interestingly, as time went on with Greater Manchester and what happened with the fleet is that they started to upgrade the pandas. So the pandas started to get flashing headlights. You could put this switch on and get flashing headlights. It just went like this. That made a huge difference getting through the traffic, because you noticed it immediately that people were seeing you more. And then they got two tones, and gradually they all got this equipment. But really interestingly, we got no further training on how to drive with that sort of equipment. It was just accepted that you've got that now, off you go, carry on. You're authorized to drive the car, and we've just put kit on it. Can't even envisage that happening now. But that was how it was. The pandas eventually started to get all that equipment, but nobody gave us any further training to tell us what had gone on with it, and how to deal with it and how to do it safely. You just were left to your own devices to get to it. Anyway, 1994. This is a year where I'm consolidating all my stuff now. I'm quite settled in this role. I've got my feet well and truly under the table. I know where I'm at and what I'm doing. There's not much that phases me. And as in that role, clearly there'd be other matters. I might start a matter that I then hand on to CID, and they pick it up because it's not my sort of job. But there we go. So now is the time where I'm running around in the Panda, pretty much like that. We also had Ford Transit vans at that point, 1,600 Transit vans. And we, at one point, we got a 2-litre Transit van, and it was like, ooh, everybody wanted the 2-litre Transit van because it was quick. Anyway, what we're looking at today, just a couple of things really. First one, domestics. Domestics are something that were part of my career when I started, and they were part of my career when I walked out on the 23rd of December last year. They haven't gone away. They're still there. They're still a huge problem. Still loads and loads of issues and stigma and people not wanting to come forward and talk about things and tell us. Still a huge, huge problem. Funny how we go on about drink drive, and it's got much less since the intoximeters were introduced, and 50 years of campaigning on drink drive, and we're bringing it down. It's not there yet, but we're bringing it down all the time. Domestics hasn't changed a jot. I'm sure some people would argue with me there, but honestly, when I look at the number of domestic incidents that come in, it shocks me. But anyway, Here's one from 1994, there or thereabouts, where we were on nights. It was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we got a call with regard to a domestic incident that had gone on. A young girl had been pretty badly beaten by her partner. She'd managed to escape her flat, and she was across the road with a friend, and she'd rung us. We all get down there, or at least the first patrol gets down there, has a chat with her, finds out what's gone on, and it turns out that partner, they live in what they affectionately call, I don't know whether they call them the same around the country, they affectionately call them cottage flats. So it's like a semi-detached house, council house, but instead of it being a house, it was two flats, ground floor and first floor. So you had a door at the front for the ground floor and a door at the side that went straight upstairs to the first floor and the other flat. And they lived in a cottage flat, and partner was still in the cottage flat on the first floor with the young baby. So he clearly needs locking up. We need to sort it all out. We go to the address. He's hanging out the window telling us that we're not coming in. He's not going to allow us in, and swearing and drunk and all the rest of it. So we've immediately got some concerns now for the child, that his partner is safe, but we're worried about the child. This becomes a huge standoff. We cannot get into this maisonette. There you go, Jenny. Thank you. Yeah, they call them cottage flats. Amazing. Yeah, but there we are dealing with it, and we can't get in. So the decision is made that we're going to have to put the door in. So we arranged to have all the equipment brought down so we can put the door in. And while we're doing that, he throws the washing machine down the stairs. So it comes right down the stairs and lands right behind the door. And the door just opens straight onto the stairs. So we can't actually, so when we start trying to force the door, we can't force the door as well as we can. Plus, it was one of these new things that the council had just got into, where they'd started fitting these really heavy duty security doors. So we've still got the kid in the house. We're still worried about this bloke who's drunk and argumentative and wants to fight the world and not letting us in and all this stuff. So we end up all kitted up, helmets, shields, all the kit, all the rest of it, and we start going at this door, and we cannot get through this door, and we cannot get through this door, and eventually the door doesn't give way, but the wooden surrounding it does, so the whole thing just sort of falls out. Drag the washing machine out of the way. Now, a lot of the time nowadays, we do an awful lot of negotiating, and we'll get a negotiator and say, I want, and the negotiators turn up and they do a great job, don't get me wrong, but they'll, we acquiesce to the person's demands and requests. I want pizza, I want this, I want the other, and all the rest of it. And eventually they might come out and it all gets sorted. We didn't really do any of that in the early days. It was very much a case of bish, bash, bosh, sorted. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I don't think it always works, but I think sometimes there's a lot to be said for no nonsense. Poof, hit it in. So we took the door off, we dragged the washing machine out of the way, we've all got the shields and everything, and we all charged up the stairs. We got to the top of the stairs, and one of the policewomen that worked with us went straight to the side, and he said, I've got the baby, the baby's fine. And he'd gone into the lounge. And here's the thing, when he went into the lounge, we've got furniture, a little table in the middle of the room, and he's on the far side. And as we come up and we link all the shields together and stand there, and the table gets yanked out the way, and he goes, all right, lads, I'm sorry. What did we do? We go, oh, right, okay, mate, thanks very much. No, you can never, ever trust somebody like that. You let your guard down and say, oh, he's give up, he's going to surrender and all this bit, and we go to take him, and he kicks off and hurts somebody. Never going to get in it. He got absolutely rammed into the corner of the wall with the shields, and he had a proper tactic to take him down and arrest him. And I don't know what happened after that. I didn't deal with the domestic, but so many times when we dealt with domestics in those situations, that we'd get somebody in custody and then we'd get a statement to say, she's not making a complaint. And what would we do then? We'd kick him out. Now, he was never going to get kicked out because of the stuff with the kid. But domestics often never had a complaint. And sometimes we'd get halfway to the police station with a prisoner in the van and they'd say, there's no complaint here, you have to kick him out. And that's what we did. Things have changed massively. Certainly not like it was, like it is today. And I think we don't get it right all the time today, to be fair. So that was the first one. The other one was a bit of a domestic, but it's sort of also a mental health matter. And it sort of goes on to this straight in sorted bish bash bosh sort of approach, if you like, in that there'd been some sort of argument and dispute and fight in a home address, and the son, who was in his 20s but clearly had some problems, be that ADHD or anger issues or proper mental health concerns, I don't know, but he'd got a knife and had barricaded himself into his room. So we all piled down there and all the rest of it, and he won't come out. We tried to talk to him. He won't come out. And eventually we've got the door to the bedroom open about this much. And as he does it, as we've got the door open this much, and there's about 4 or 5 of us all on the top of the landing and about 3 all around the door, as we get the door open that much, the knife comes out through the door in a hand. And quick as lightning, one of the cops, quick as lightning, has got hold of the wrist, and they've got hold of it. And so now we've got this wrist through the door, but we can't open the door any further. And they're fighting with this wrist, and they're saying, let go of the knife, let go of the knife. And he wouldn't let go of the knife. And one of the cops on the team got his truncheon out, and he saw this lad's wrist, and he was like, bash, 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 bash on this lad's wrist, trying to get him to drop this knife. Drop the knife, drop the knife. And one of the cops goes, Darren, it's my wrist you're hitting. And he wasn't hitting the wrist of the person who'd got the knife. He was hitting the wrist of one of the cops, whose wrist went like, boom, the size of a football. But suffice to say, he did get detained. I don't know what happened after that. We got the knife off him. Nobody was hurt. And I hope that he got the right support that he needed and all the rest of it. But again, it's such a long time ago, and I don't remember having to deal with the job. So somebody else must have picked it up, which is always quite nice when you've had all that excitement and adrenaline and everything. Then you drive away and think, great, I don't have to do any paperwork for that job. Somebody else has got it. But there we go. That was that. At this point in my career now, I'm absolutely loving the job. And it was always one of those things that we talked yesterday about Merv the Swerve, and that the job was knackered and it wasn't what it used to be, and blah, blah, blah. And I used to think, what's the matter with him? This job's great. I'm running around in a car with blue lights and going to pub fights and chasing burglars and doing it. It's brilliant. I was a single lad. I lived at home with my parents still. So I could do what I liked. I didn't have any commitments. And so often it would be at that changeover point on the shift where everybody wants to go home, and I'd be going, I'll go. I just kept going and say, Neil, go home now, get off. But great fun, happy times. Then what do we do then? Oh, the next one we've got is another one of the things that's great about the job in those days, was going fence hopping. And that's not something that you just sort of decide to do. But obviously at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, it would always go very, very quiet. And that was when you went out hunting and snooping and looking. You might change into plain clothes and go and have a mosey about, or you just sneak around on foot for a while and see what you could find. Or you'd get a call, so search, somebody thinks they've got somebody in the back garden, or somebody thinks there's somebody breaking into the house across the way, or whatever. And we also get down there and lights off and sirens and drive really slowly the last sort of quarter of a mile so they don't hear the engine racing coming, because it's deadly silent, nothing else other than a I think, yeah, that's the cops coming. Even if we've not got sirens on, they know the cops are coming. So you get to the point, and then you go chasing them. And there was one particular job, it was daylight, but it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and there were a couple of lads breaking into some cars on a drive at the bottom of this cul-de-sac. And me and one of the lads, Andy, we got to this point, and we sort of left the cars at the top, and we walked down dead quietly, and I was crouching down behind cars, and we get right on top of them, and Andy was to my left, and we were both sort of crouched down and getting closer and closer and passing messages on the radio. And then Andy stood up and started walking towards them. And that confused me, because I thought, well, they can see him now. Why is he stood up? He's just walking towards them. Has he seen something that's legit that I haven't? So I stood up and started walking towards them. They saw me and legged it. And the reason Andy was stood up was he was masked by something, but I couldn't see that he was masked. So he'd sort of stood up to get a bit closer. So they were off on the toes through the gate at the side of the house and through the back garden, and we're after them. And then the fence hopping comes in, because they're over a fence and through the next one and over and through a hedge and all over all the gardens, all around the back. And you're trying to think in your head, if we go this way, where are they going to come out? What road are they going to come out on? What direction are they going in? And in between all that, you're running, jumping, climbing over fences, trying to pass a message on the radio and trying to catch these two lads that have been trying to screw the car. And on this particular occasion, there was like a line of four of us, the two lads running. And so the first lad went over this big sort of Waney lap fence. The second lad went over it and it looked a bit weak. Andy went over it and it sort of started to snap in the middle. And I sort of just went straight through it and it just smacked apart and then fell out into the garden. I just kept, it's a bit like one of those cartoon things where they run through and leave an outline of something. But happy days, chasing people around gardens and trying to catch people, and it's like cops and it is cops and robbers, but it's, you know, cowboys and Indians for grown-ups, you know, and such a great time. Doc Martens were never the boot to wear. I used to wear Doc Martens for all my stuff when I started out, and Parade and Bruges and everything. It was Doc Martens. You soon find that Doc Martens are absolutely useless in the wet on grass. All you do is go and end up on your backside. So many times that happened that in the end I just got rid of my Docs and I started wearing different types of boots. But there we go, fence hopping. So that was always good fun. The final one that we're going to have tonight is the bewildered burglar. You think, well, what am I on about there with the bewildered burglar? Sometimes, just sometimes, everything comes together right. And on this occasion, I think it was coming up towards Christmas, we'd got loads of patrols on. Loads, and there wasn't really, there couldn't have been much happening, because we got a report of a burglary in progress, what we would call a thieves on, and a thieves on at some really fancy flats in Didsbury. So we all piled down there, the rest of it. We piled down there, and one of the lads goes to the scene, and we all start plotting off around the rest of it, and this burglar's off on his toes. But the burglary, he runs out onto this street and comes across CID, who've also turned up at the job. So he turns around and backs off and comes back into this centre area and goes out in a different direction and comes across some of the area bobbies who've also come to the job. And he knows that us on section are at this other location. So he goes out in another direction and he comes across the mounted branch who are there on the street looking for him. And then up above him is the helicopter, and the traffic cars are all coming from every direction. And it was so funny at the time, because every single patrol that we had on duty turned out, and we had traffic, section, area, horses, you know, everybody, helicopter, air support, the dogman, the lot. We were all there. And in the end, he just came out and went, "It's just not my day, is it?" He said, "No, you're not going to get away today at all." So that was him, and we got that done. And the final thing, really, with a lot of those jobs and working with the dog handlers, is that there was always an instruction that went out on the radio: the dog's off the lead. And that was always a moment to be mindful, because the dogs don't differentiate between burglar and PC. They don't care. If you're running, they'll have you. And the way for anybody to avoid a police dog taking hold of them, shall we say, is to stop and stand still. Now, that's not giving burglars and people that are trying to escape from the cops a reason to avoid the dog, because what the dog will do is it will then do a standoff, and it stands off that person and it will bark like crazy, saying, I found him, I found him, I found him, I found him, come and get me, come and get me, I found him. But it was always one of those things that if you were out, you know, in the dark with a torch and all the rest of it, and then you can hear rustling in the bushes, and you're thinking, is it the burglar and I'm letting a burglar get away, or is it the dog coming through? Which is it? Because you think, I'll go and grab it and come out with a dog on my arm, or whatever it might be. But that was always a scary moment, not knowing whether or not the dog was going to have you. And of course, the handlers, when the dog has done its job and has done its job well, it's found somebody, they were running away, it's took hold of them and grabbed them. It's very difficult for you then to start saying to the dog, no, no, because the dog's done what it's supposed to do. It's the cop that wasn't behaving as they should. But there we go. So fence hopping, the bewildered burglar who just gave up in the end because everything all came together. Every department within the force, I think, turned out to the burglary. It was incredible. And domestics and on all those jobs that went along over those years. That's about it for today. 33 years in 31 days, day 5, looking at 1994. Thank you, folks, for dropping in. It wasn't Richard Madeley, no. But it's around about this time. I'm not entirely sure of the dates, but it's around about this time that Richard Madeley came into custody, because Richard Madeley was arrested for shoplifting at Tesco in Didsbury. I didn't have any involvement with the job, but I knew that he'd been locked up because it was the talk of the Nick that Richard Madeley had been arrested. And it was one of those jobs that just dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And he went to Crown Court and he got off it at Crown Court, some sort of forgetfulness, empty-headed sort of daydream type defence. Never quite understood it, but I think it was one of those things where he'd bought all the shopping, but there was like bottles and bottles of champagne that he'd not paid for. But anyway, but yeah, he did come into custody, and he was in one of the cells at Platt Lane, which was our custody suite at the time. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about Platt Lane at some point over the years to come. Well, there we go. That's 1994. So just looking towards tomorrow, reaching that sort of point now where I'm getting itchy feet, and I'm wanting to do something else, and looking at what I can do and what I can't do, and where I might like to take my career. So let's see where that takes us in 1995 tomorrow. So thank you for dropping in. Great to have you with me. And replay viewers, thank you for watching and hanging in if you get this far. Hopefully we will see you tomorrow. Until then, have a safe evening. Good night.